The little girl's bare feet left blood in the snow, each step a red stain on white. 10-year-old Emma Rose Hartley did not look back at the wagon disappearing into the blizzard. She already knew. The woman who had promised to care for her was gone. The frozen bread in her pocket was all she had left. December 15, 1887, the Bitterroot Valley of Montana Territory. The sky hung low and gray like a burial shroud stretched across the mountains. Snowflakes fell, not gently, not like in fairy tales, but sideways and sharp, cutting into exposed skin like tiny frozen knives. The temperature had dropped below 0 hours ago, and it was still falling. Emma Rose Hartley stood alone on a dirt road that had already vanished beneath the white. Behind her, the wagon tracks were filling in fast, erased by the storm, as if Mildred Crane had never existed, as if the last 8 months had been nothing but a fever dream. She was 10 years old. She weighed 63 pounds. She was wearing a cotton dress 2 sizes too small, a threadbare shawl that did nothing against the wind, and no shoes. Her shoes had been sold 3 weeks ago along with her winter coat to buy flour for bread that Emma never got to eat. The cold had already moved past pain into something else, something quieter, something that whispered surrender. But Emma Rose Hartley was not ready to surrender. Not yet. 3 years ago in the copper mines of Butte, Montana, her father Thomas Hartley had made her promise something. He had knelt down in the dirt outside their tiny cabin, his hands still black with mine dust, his eyes bright with a love so fierce it had burned itself into her memory forever. "You are going to be something special, Emma Rose," he had said. "I can see it in you. Something bright, something strong. Do not ever let anybody tell you different. And when life knocks you down, because it will, you get back up. That is what Hartleys do. We get up, always. Promise me." She had promised. 6 months later, the Anaconda mine collapsed. 47 men buried alive under 1,000 tons of rock, Thomas Hartley among them. Emma had stood outside the mine entrance for 3 days, waiting for a miracle that never came. When they finally pulled her away, she did not cry. She had already learned that crying did not bring people back. Crying did not change anything. Crying only made you weak, and weakness got you hurt. The orphanage taught her the rest. St. Mary's Home for Destitute Children in Helena was a gray brick building that smelled of lye soap and despair. 3 years there had stripped away whatever softness remained in Emma Rose Hartley. She learned to eat fast before the older children could steal her food. She learned to sleep light, one eye always half open. She learned that adults made promises they never intended to keep, and that hope was just another word for disappointment waiting to happen. When Mildred Crane came to St. Mary's in April of 1887, offering to give Emma a real home, the matron had called it a blessing. Emma knew better than to believe in blessings, but she went anyway. Anything was better than the orphanage, or so she thought. 8 months with Mildred Crane taught her that she had been wrong. Some things were worse than the orphanage. Some things were worse than anything she had imagined. Mildred Crane did not want a daughter. She wanted free labor. Emma worked 18-hour days on the woman's failing farm outside Missoula, feeding chickens before dawn, mucking out stalls, hauling water, scrubbing floors, cooking meals she was barely allowed to taste, sleeping in a corner of the tool shed because the house was for family only, and Emma was not family. Emma was just a mouth to feed a body to use a problem to be solved. And when winter came hard and the well froze and the crops failed, and there was not enough food for 2, Mildred Crane solved the problem the simplest way she knew how. She drove Emma 20 miles into the wilderness and left her there to die. Get out. Those had been her words. Flat, dead. Like something inside her had frozen long before the winter came. "Please, Mrs. Crane." Emma had begged, knowing it was useless, but unable to stop herself. "Please do not leave me here. I will work harder. I will eat less. I will not be any trouble, I swear." Mildred Crane had not even looked at her. She had simply tossed a small bundle into the snow, a handkerchief wrapped around some stale bread and a piece of hard cheese, and picked up the reins. "That should last you a day or 2. Her voice carried no emotion at all. "If you walk east, you might find someone, or you might not. Either way, it is not my problem anymore." The wagon had pulled away. Emma had watched it go. She did not run after it. She did not scream or cry or throw herself at the wheels. She had learned long ago that begging only made the leaving worse. People who abandoned you did not look back, and if you forced them to, they would only hate you more for it. So she stood there in the snow, silent and small, and watched the only home she had known for 8 months disappear into the white. Then she picked up the bundle at her feet and started walking. 1 hour passed, then 2. The blizzard grew worse with every step. Emma could not see more than a few feet ahead. The wind screamed in her ears like something alive and angry, pushing her sideways, trying to knock her down. The snow was past her ankles now, and every step was a battle. Her feet had stopped hurting a long time ago. That was bad. She knew that was bad. When the cold stopped hurting, it meant the cold was winning. "Get up," Emma rose, her father's voice clear as a bell inside her head. "Get up. This is not how your story ends." "I am trying, Papa," she whispered through frozen lips. "I am trying." She stumbled. Her knee hit something hard beneath the snow, a rock maybe, or a root, and she went down. The impact barely registered. Her body was too cold to feel much of anything anymore. The snow was soft around her, almost warm in a strange way. It would be easy to just lie here, to close her eyes, to let go. No, the voice in her head was fiercer now, more urgent. "You promised me," Emma rose. "You promised you would get up, always. Do not break your promise to me now." Emma pressed her palms into the snow. Her arms shook. Her whole body trembled, but she pushed. And she got up. 1 step, then another, then another. That was when she heard it, a sound that did not belong to the storm. Hoofbeats, steady and strong, cutting through the howl of the wind. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. Strangers on lonely roads rarely meant anything good. She had learned that lesson too many times to forget it. But there was nowhere to hide. Nothing but snow and trees and the endless white void. So she stood there swaying on her frozen feet and waited. The horse emerged from the blizzard like a ghost. A big chestnut mare with a white blaze on her forehead, moving through the deep snow as if it were nothing. And on her back sat a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered. His hair was silver beneath a worn cattleman's hat, and his face was weathered leather lined with years of sun and wind and hard living. He looked to be somewhere around 60 years old, maybe older, maybe younger. It was hard to tell with men who had spent their lives under the open sky. But his eyes were what Emma noticed first. They were gray like the winter sky, but not cold, not hard. They held something else, something that looked almost like recognition, almost like pain. The horse stopped. The man stared down at her for a long moment, and Emma saw something change in his face, saw the shock give way to something deeper, something that made no sense to a child who had never seen anyone look at her that way. "Lord Almighty," his voice was rough, low, thick with emotion. He did not try to hide. "What in God's name are you doing out here alone?" Emma opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Her body had stopped obeying her commands somewhere in the last hour. Her vision blurred, her knees buckled, she was falling. And then she was not. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. Warm hands, so warm they burned against her frozen skin. "I got you." The stranger's voice was close to her ear now, gentle despite its roughness. "I got you, child. You are safe now." Emma looked up at him, this man she had never seen before, this man who had stopped for her when no one else ever had. "Why?" The words scraped out of her throat like broken glass. "Why did you stop?" Something flickered across his face. Old pain, old grief, old wounds that had never quite healed. "Because somebody should have," he said quietly. "A long time ago somebody should have stopped for me." He lifted her onto the horse like she weighed nothing at all, swung up behind her, wrapped one arm around her waist solid and steady. "Name is Ezekiel Morgan. Most folks call me Zeke. Got a ranch about 2 miles north of here." He kicked the mare into motion. "You hold on now, you hear? Do not you let go." Emma's frozen fingers found the saddle horn, gripped it with what little strength she had left. "I do not have anywhere else to go," she whispered. "You do now." The ranch house emerged from the white, like an answer to a prayer Emma had stopped believing in years ago. 2 stories of stone and timber solid against the storm, windows glowing warm with lamplight, smoke rising from the chimney promising heat and safety and everything she had given up hoping for. "Henrietta!" Zeke shouted over the wind. "Henrietta, open up. We got trouble." The door flew open. A woman stood there, gray-streaked hair pulled back tight, weathered face-eyes that went wide when she saw what Zeke was carrying. "Lord have mercy," she breathed. "Get her inside, now." They moved around Emma like a storm of their own. Blankets appeared from nowhere. Someone pressed a cup of something hot into her hands, and when she could not hold it, Henrietta held it for her, tipping it against her lips. "Small sips, child, small sips. That is right." A black man appeared younger than Zeke, but built just as solid with intelligent eyes and capable hands. Marcus Williams was his name, and he took one look at Emma's feet and started giving orders about water temperature and warming too fast and tissue damage. Emma barely heard any of it. The warmth was seeping into her bones now, and with it came exhaustion so profound she could barely keep her eyes open. "What is your name, child?" Henrietta's voice was gruff, but her eyes were soft. "Emma," Emma managed. "Emma Rose Hartley." "Well, Emma Rose Hartley, you are safe now. You hear me? Safe, safe." The word bounced around in Emma's head, looking for somewhere to land. She had not felt safe in 3 years, had almost forgotten what the word meant. "I have never been safe," she heard herself say. "I am not sure I know how." Something passed across Henrietta's face, something that might have been pain, might have been recognition. "You will learn," she said softly. "Lord help us, child. You will learn." The shivering started then, violent whole-body tremors that made Emma's teeth rattle and her bones ache, but Marcus said that was good. Said it meant she was warming up, meant she was going to make it. Of course she is going to make it. Zeke's voice was gruff, but Emma heard something underneath it. Something raw, something fierce. "I did not ride through a blizzard to bring home a corpse." Later, after the worst of the cold had been driven from her body, after she had eaten more than she had eaten in weeks, after they had put her in a real bed with real blankets in a real room that was supposed to be hers, Emma lay awake in the darkness and tried to understand what was happening. None of this made sense. People did not just help strangers, not without wanting something in return, not without some catch, some price, some trap waiting to spring. But Zeke Morgan had helped her, had saved her life. And when she had asked him why he had said something that she could not stop thinking about. Somebody should have stopped for me. What did that mean? Who was he? What had happened to him that made him ride into a blizzard to save a child he had never met? She did not know, but she was going to find out. The next morning, Emma woke to the smell of bacon and fresh bread and coffee. Smells she had almost forgotten. Smells that belonged to a life she had stopped believing in. She made her way downstairs on careful feet, still not sure this was real, still half expecting to wake up and find herself back in the snow, dying alone the way she had always known she would. But the kitchen was real. The warmth was real. And the 3 people sitting at the big wooden table. They were real too. "She is up," Marcus nodded at her from his seat. "Thought you might sleep until spring. Sit down." Henrietta was already moving toward the stove. "Food is almost ready." Emma sat. The chair was solid beneath her, real. Zeke Morgan sat across from her, a cup of coffee in his hands, watching her with those gray eyes that seemed to see everything. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Sore," Emma admitted, "but alive." "Sore is normal. You walked through a blizzard with no shoes. Surprised you still have all your toes?" Emma looked down at her bandaged feet. "I might not, have not checked yet." Marcus laughed, warm and sudden. "She has got spirit, boss. I like that. Spirit is what kept her alive." Zeke set down his coffee cup. "Spirit and stubbornness. Same things that kept my Rosalie going when she first came here." The name hung in the air. Rosalie. Someone important. Someone connected to the sadness Emma had seen in Zeke's eyes. She filed the name away for later. Right now, there was food in front of her, more food than she had seen in months, and her body was screaming at her to eat. So she ate. She tried to go slow at first, tried to remember her manners, but hunger won. She ate like a starving animal, barely stopping to breathe, until her plate was empty, and Henrietta was silently refilling it. When she finally looked up, all three of them were watching her. "Sorry," she mumbled. "I did not mean to. Do not apologize for being hungry." Henrietta's voice was sharp but not unkind. "Apologize when you do something wrong. Being hungry is not wrong." Emma nodded, swallowed, tried to find words for what she was feeling, but there were none. Zeke leaned back in his chair. "I meant what I said last night, Emma. You have got a home here if you want it. No conditions, no strings, just a place to be." "Why?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Nobody does something for nothing. Not in my experience. Then your experience has been with the wrong people." Emma stared at him, studied his face for any sign of deception, any hint that this was all some cruel joke. She found nothing but weathered honesty and old pain. "There is something you should see." Zeke stood up from the table. "Something you need to understand about this place, about why I do what I do." He led her through the house, past rooms filled with furniture, covered in white sheets, past closed doors that clearly had not been opened in years, until they reached a room at the end of an upstairs hallway. Zeke's hand rested on the doorknob, but he did not turn it. Not yet. "What I am about to show you," he said slowly, "it is not easy to look at. But I think you need to see it, need to understand." He opened the door. The room beyond was small and simple. A bed in the corner, a dresser with a mirror, a window overlooking the snow-covered valley, and on the walls, covering nearly every inch of available space, drawings. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Pictures in charcoal and pencil and faded color. Pictures of horses and mountains and flowers and suns. Pictures of a house that looked like this one. Pictures of people holding hands, smiling together. In the corner of each drawing, a name was signed in a child's careful hand. Rosalie. This was her room. Zeke's voice was rough. "My daughter, I have not changed anything since she passed. Cannot bring myself to." Emma walked into the room slowly. Her fingers brushed against the drawings on the wall. "She came to us 12 years ago, Zeke continued. "Same way you did, half dead, half starved, running from people who should have protected her. My wife Charlotte, she saw something in Rosalie that nobody else had bothered to look for. She loved that girl back to life." "What happened?" Emma asked softly. "Fever." Zeke's voice cracked. "Took Charlotte first. Rosalie held on for another year, but I think she could not bear to live in a world without her mother. She was 16 years old, brightest thing this ranch ever saw. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Be something else." Emma turned to look at him. "Charlotte always said this house was too big for us. Too many empty rooms. She wanted to fill it. Wanted to open our doors to children who had nobody else. Children like Rosalie. Children like—" He paused. "Like you. You want to adopt me, if you will have me." Zeke's eyes were wet now, but his voice was steady. "I am not asking you to replace Rosalie. Nobody could ever do that. I am asking if you would let me try again. Try to be the kind of man who does not let children die alone in the snow." Emma stood there in Rosalie's room, surrounded by drawings of a life cut short, and felt something crack open in her chest. Something she had been holding together for 3 years with nothing but willpower and stubbornness. "I do not know how to trust people," she whispered. "Every time I do, they leave. I know." Zeke nodded. "I know that is what you have learned, but I am not leaving. This ranch has been my home for 30 years, and if you want it, it can be yours too." Emma looked at the drawings on the walls, looked at this man who had lost everything but was still willing to try, looked at the life that was being offered to her, a life she had never dared to imagine. And for the first time in 3 years, Emma Rose Hartley allowed herself to hope. "Yes." The word came out barely louder than a breath. "Yes, I want to stay. I want this to be my home." Zeke Morgan crossed the room in 2 strides and wrapped his arms around her. And Emma, who had not let anyone hold her since her father died, buried her face in his chest and cried. She cried for her papa dead in the dark. She cried for her mama, who she had never known. She cried for the orphanage and the waiting and Mildred Crane and the frozen bread in her pocket. She cried for every person who had looked at her and seen nothing worth keeping. And through it all, Zeke held her. This stranger who had stopped in a blizzard, This man who had lost his own daughter but still had enough love left to save another. When the tears finally stopped, Emma looked up at him. "What happens now?" she asked. Now Zeke smiled, and for the first time, the sadness in his eyes was joined by something else, something that looked almost like hope. "Now we build something. Together. Something Charlotte would have been proud of." He led her back downstairs where Henrietta had hot chocolate waiting, and Marcus was already talking about teaching her to ride. And outside the window the snow had stopped falling, and the first rays of winter sunlight were breaking through the clouds, turning the valley into a sea of glittering white. It was December 25th, 1887, Christmas Day, and for the first time in 3 years, Emma Rose Hartley had a family. But out there in the cold, somewhere in the vast Montana wilderness, there were other children waiting, other lives that needed saving, and a man named Cornelius Blackwood who would stop at nothing to destroy everything Zeke Morgan was trying to build. The story was just beginning, January 18th, 1888. 1 month had passed since Emma Rose Hartley became Emma Rose Morgan. The nightmares still came sometimes, dreams of frozen feet and white void and a wagon disappearing into nothing. But now when she woke, gasping in the dark, there was a warm bed beneath her and a roof above her, and the knowledge that morning would bring breakfast and safety and people who actually cared whether she lived or died. She was learning to trust again, slowly, carefully, like a wild animal being coaxed toward an open hand. Henrietta taught her to cook and clean and manage a household, not because she had to earn her keep, but because these were skills a woman needed to survive in this world. Marcus taught her about horses, about cattle, about reading the weather and the land. And Zeke taught her the most important lesson of all. "You are worth something, Emma Rose," he told her one evening as they sat by the fire. "Not because of what you can do, not because of what you can give. You are worth something just because you exist. Do not ever let anyone tell you different." She was starting to believe him, but the peaceful days could not last forever. Emma had learned that lesson too many times to forget it. Happiness was always temporary. Safety was always an illusion. And just when you started to let your guard down, the world would remind you why you should never have trusted it in the first place. The reminder came on a night when the second blizzard of the season howled down from the mountains like a living thing. Emma was sitting by the fire reading a book that Zeke had bought her from Helena when the pounding started. Not a polite knock, desperate hammering, the sound of someone who had run out of time. Zeke was at the door before Emma could move. Marcus appeared from the back of the house with a rifle in his hands. Henrietta positioned herself between Emma and whatever was about to come through that door. The man who stumbled inside was Jacob Wheeler, a farmer from the north end of the valley. His face was gray with cold and something worse. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely stand. "Morgan, thank God. Thank God I found you. Easy, Jacob." Zeke steadied him. "What happened the Henderson place? Fire. Whole thing went up last night." Jacob's voice cracked. "Tom Henderson and his wife. Dead. Both of them." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. She had never met the Hendersons, but she knew what fire meant in winter. She knew what dead parents meant for the children left behind. The children. Zeke's voice was sharp. "What about the children? 2 of them, boy and a girl. I found them this morning hiding in the barn that did not burn." Jacob was crying now, tears freezing on his cheeks. "They have got nobody, Morgan, not a soul in this world. I did not know where else to bring them. Where are they now?" "In my wagon, out by the gate. I did not want to bring them up without asking first. Did not know if you would—" "Bring them!" Zeke was already reaching for his coat. "Bring them now." Emma followed him outside without thinking. The cold hit her like a wall, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was 2 children sitting in a wagon in a blizzard, alone, and terrified, and waiting to find out if anyone in the world still wanted them. She knew that feeling. She knew it in her bones. The wagon was barely visible through the driving snow. Jacob had thrown a tarp over the back, but it was poor protection against a Montana winter. When Zeke pulled it aside, Emma saw 2 small figures huddled together under a thin blanket. The older one was a boy, maybe 12 years old, with dark hair and dark eyes, and a jaw set hard in that way Emma recognized immediately. The way children looked when they had learned that crying did not help, that showing weakness only made things worse. He was holding a smaller girl, maybe 8 years old, clutching her against his chest like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. And maybe she was. Maybe after everything else had been taken from him, this little girl was all he had left. "Hey there." Zeke's voice was gentle, same tone he had used with Emma in the snow a month ago. "My name is Zeke Morgan. This is my ranch. You are safe here." The boy did not answer. His dark eyes stared at Zeke with suspicion so deep it was almost hatred. "Trust no one," those eyes said. "Everyone leaves, everyone lies, everyone hurts you in the end." Emma stepped forward. She knew those eyes. She had worn them herself, not so long ago. "My name is Emma," she said softly. "I came here a month ago, also in a blizzard, also with nowhere else to go, also not believing that anyone would actually help me." Something flickered in the boy's expression. Not trust, not yet, but recognition, an acknowledgement that this girl understood something about him that the adults never could. "Daniel," he said finally. His voice was raw, scraped thin by smoke and screaming, and a night spent listening to his whole world burn. "Daniel Mitchell. This is my sister Ruby." Ruby looked up at Emma with enormous eyes still wet with tears. She was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering, but she had not made a sound, had not complained, had not asked for anything, because she had already learned that asking did not help, that wanting only led to disappointment. "Ruby." Emma crouched down to the little girl's level. "Are you hungry? There is food inside, hot food, and a fire." Ruby looked at her brother. Daniel hesitated for a long moment, weighing risks and possibilities, calculating whether this offer was real or just another trap. Then Ruby whispered something so quiet Emma almost missed it. "I am cold." Daniel's resistance crumbled. Whatever walls he had built to protect himself, they were nothing compared to his need to protect his sister. "All right," he said. "We will come inside." Zeke reached up to help them down from the wagon. This time Daniel took his hand. The Henderson children were not the same as Emma. They had not been abandoned by someone who was supposed to care for them. Their parents had not chosen to leave. The fire had simply come in the night fast and hungry and taken everything before anyone could stop it. But trauma was trauma. Loss was loss. And the look in Daniel's eyes when he sat at the kitchen table, one arm wrapped protectively around Ruby, watching every movement like he expected an attack at any moment, that look was exactly the same as the one Emma had worn her first night at Silver Creek. "You do not have to protect her from the potatoes," Marcus said gently, trying to lighten the mood. "They are not going to bite." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I am not hungry. You are lying." Emma spoke before she could stop herself. "You are starving. I can see it in your face. But you will not eat until you are sure she is safe. Because that is what you do. You take care of her first. Always." Daniel turned to stare at her. His dark eyes searched her face for mockery, for cruelty, for the catch that always came with kindness. "How would you know?" he demanded. "Because I did the same thing." Emma held his gaze. "First night I was here, could not eat, kept waiting for someone to snatch the plate away. Tell me I had not earned it." Ruby tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Daniel," he promised. "Promises do not mean anything, Ruby." Daniel's voice was bitter, old, far too old for a 12-year-old boy. "People say all kinds of things." "Then watch what we do." Zeke leaned forward, his gray eyes steady. "Ignore the words. Watch the actions. And when you have seen enough, you can decide for yourself whether we are worth trusting." Daniel stared at him for a long moment. The fire crackled, wind howled outside, and something in the boy's expression shifted. Not trust? Not yet. But maybe the beginning of something. He picked up his fork and started to eat. Emma let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. That night she found Daniel standing outside the room they had given to Rosalie. The door was open. He was staring at the drawings on the walls. Who was she? He asked without turning around. Her name was Rosalie. Emma came to stand beside him. She was Zeke's daughter, not by blood, but his all the same. What happened to her fever 5 years ago? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made Emma's chest ache. The Hendersons were not bad people. They worked us hard, but they fed us, kept a roof over our heads. I thought maybe, he trailed off, maybe they would start to love you. Emma finished for him. Yeah, his voice cracked. Stupid, right? No, not stupid. Human. They died. Daniel's hands curled into fists at his sides, burned up in their own house. And all I could think, standing there, watching the flames, all I could think was that I was glad Ruby was not inside. That is it. Not sad for the Hendersons, not grateful for what they gave us. Just glad my sister was alive. That is not wrong, Daniel. Feels wrong. Emma reached out and put her hand on his arm. He flinched, but did not pull away. You protected her, she said. That is what matters. Everything else, the guilt, the feelings, all that mess inside your head, that is just noise. The truth is simple. You kept your sister alive. And now you are here, and you have got a chance at something better. Daniel's eyes were wet. He blinked hard, fighting the tears with everything he had. I do not know how to do this, he whispered. Do not know how to stop fighting. Stop watching. Stop waiting for everything to fall apart. I know. Emma squeezed his arm. I do not know either, but maybe we can figure it out together. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time since he had arrived, something in his face softened. Yeah, he said quietly, maybe we can. 3 weeks later, Marcus found Samuel Prescott half buried in a snowdrift near the south fence. The boy was 11 years old, thin as a skeleton, wearing rags that would not have kept a dog warm. When they carried him inside and started warming him up, Emma saw the scars on his back, old scars, layered scars, the kind that came from years of beatings. It took 3 days for Samuel to wake up properly, and when he did, the first words out of his mouth were a plea. Please do not send me back. I will do anything. Please do not send me back to him. Back to who? Zeke asked gently. Samuel's dark eyes, black as coal, stared at something no one else could see. My father, he finally said. My father was a bad man. He stole horses, and when they caught him, Samuel's voice broke. They hanged him 3 months ago in Missoula. The room went very quiet. After that, Samuel continued, nobody wanted me. They said I was bad blood, said I would turn out just like him. The last man who took me in, he did not want me for work. He wanted— Samuel stopped, could not continue. Emma understood. She did not need details to understand what kind of monster had gotten hold of this boy. Samuel, Zeke's voice was low and fierce. Listen to me. You are not your father. You are not what he did. And you are never going back to anyone who hurt you. Never. You mean that tears were streaming down Samuel's face now. You are not afraid I will turn out bad. I am afraid of a lot of things, Samuel, but I am not afraid of a child who needs help. Emma sat down on the edge of the bed. She looked at this boy who had been told his whole life that he was worthless, that he was destined for darkness, that the sins of his father ran in his blood like poison. I used to think I was garbage, she told him. Thought that because everyone threw me away, I must not be worth keeping. But I was wrong. How do you know? Samuel whispered. Because I am still here. Emma smiled softly. And you are still here too. And Daniel and Ruby are still here. All of us, we are the children the world tried to throw away. But we are still alive. We are still fighting. And that proves we are worth something. That proves we deserve to be loved. Samuel stared at her for a long time, searching for the lie, for the trap, for the cruelty hiding behind the kindness. He did not find it. Family. He whispered the word like it was foreign, like he was tasting it for the first time. I never had a family before. You do now, Emma said, if you want one. The threats started small, a letter here, a visit there, rumors spreading through the valley like wildfire. Ezekiel Morgan is collecting children, a man his age living alone, suddenly filling his house with orphans. Suspicious, is it not? Strange, is it not? Someone should look into that. Cornelius Blackwood never said anything directly. He was too smart for that. But everyone knew where the whispers were coming from. Everyone knew who was paying for the lawyer in Helena to start asking questions about proper documentation and legal guardianship and the suitability of a single man to raise so many children. Blackwood had been trying to destroy the Morgan family for 30 years. His father had lost the South pasture to Zeke's father in a poker game, and the Blackwoods had never forgiven the Morgans for winning fair and square. Now Blackwood had found a new weapon, and he was not afraid to use it. The sheriff came on a cold February morning, riding alongside Blackwood himself. Emma watched from the window as Zeke walked out to meet them, his back straight, his hand resting near the pistol on his hip. "Sheriff Caldwell." Zeke's voice was polite but cold. "What brings you out here? There have been some concerns raised." The sheriff looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting toward Blackwood. "About the children you are keeping here. I am not keeping anyone. I am providing a home for children who have nowhere else to go. That is the question, is it not?" Blackwood stepped forward, his smile sharp as a knife. "These children, do they have proper documentation? Is there anyone with authority who approved you taking them, or did you just collect them?" Emma had heard enough. She pushed through the front door and marched across the yard until she was standing beside Zeke. Daniel appeared behind her, then Samuel, then Ruby clutching Emma's hand. 4 children standing together facing down a man who wanted to tear them apart. "I am Emma Morgan." Emma's voice rang out clear and strong. "Formerly, Emma Hartley. 1 month ago, a woman named Mildred Crane left me in a blizzard to die. I walked for hours in the snow with no shoes. I would be dead right now if Mr. Morgan had not found me." She held up her hands, showing the fading scars from frostbite. "You want to see the records? They are at St. Mary's Orphanage in Helena. You want to know if anyone approved Mr. Morgan taking me in? The alternative was freezing to death in a snowdrift. So, yes, I approved it. I approved someone saving my life." The sheriff stared at her. Blackwood's smile faltered. "These children," Emma continued, gesturing to Daniel and Samuel and Ruby, "they lost everything. Their homes, their families, their hope. And this man," she pointed at Zeke, "this man gave them something back. He gave them a chance. He gave them love. And you want to take that away? For what? Because his family won a card game 30 years ago. That is enough." Blackwood's voice was sharp. "This child has been coached. She does not know what she is saying. I know exactly what I am saying." Emma stepped closer to him, close enough to see the cold fury in his eyes. "I am saying that you are a bitter old man who would rather destroy something good than admit you lost. I am saying that these children have suffered enough without you adding to it. And I am saying that if you come for this family, you will have to go through me first." Silence. Sheriff Caldwell cleared his throat. I think I have seen enough here." He looked at Blackwood. "There is no evidence of wrongdoing, Cornelius. These children seem healthy, cared for. I am not going to tear apart a family because of rumors. This is not over." Blackwood snarled. "It never is with you," Zeke replied calmly. "But today you have lost. Go home." Blackwood turned his horse and rode away without another word. But the look he gave Emma as he left, cold and calculating and full of promise, told her everything she needed to know. This was not over, not even close. That night, Emma sat with Daniel and Samuel and Ruby around the big table in the kitchen. The fire crackled, wind howled outside. But in here there was warmth and light and the smell of Henrietta's fresh bread. "We did it," Daniel said, and for the first time since he had arrived, he actually smiled. "We stood up to him." "He will be back," Emma said. "Men like that do not give up. Then we will stand up to him again." Samuel's voice was quiet but steady. "That is what family does, right? We protect each other." "Family." Ruby whispered the word like a prayer. She looked around the table at the faces that had become her whole world. "We are really a family now. We always were." Emma reached over and squeezed her hand. "From the moment we walked through that door, we just did not know it yet." Zeke appeared in the doorway, watching them with eyes that glistened in the firelight. "I am proud of you," he said softly. "All of you. What you did today, standing together like that took courage." "You taught us," Emma replied. "You showed us what family means." "No," Zeke shook his head. "I gave you a roof and some meals. What you have built between yourselves, this bond, this trust, this love, that is all you, and it is the most beautiful thing I have seen in years." He crossed to the table and sat down with them. "Charlotte would have loved this," he said quietly. "Seeing this house full of children again, seeing these empty chairs finally filled." She always said family was not about blood. Family was about choice, about showing up for each other day after day, no matter what. He looked around the table at each of them in turn. "And that is exactly what you are doing. That is exactly what we are building here. A family, a real family. And nothing, not Blackwood, not the sheriff, not anyone, is ever going to take that away." Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the walls of Silver Creek Ranch, 4 children who had been thrown away by the world sat together and felt something they had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. Real hope. The kind that did not need to be hidden or protected or kept small. The kind that could grow and spread and light up even the darkest corners of a wounded heart. Emma looked at her brothers and sister, looked at the man who had become her father, looked at the life she had never dared to dream of. And she knew with a certainty that went deeper than bone that she would fight for this, that she would protect this family with everything she had, that she would never ever let anyone take it away. Because this was home, and Emma Rose Morgan was finally exactly where she belonged. Spring came slowly to the Bitterroot Valley. The snow retreated inch by inch, revealing brown grass and muddy roads, and the first stubborn shoots of green pushing through the frozen earth. The world was waking up again after months of white silence. But for the family at Silver Creek Ranch, the thaw brought new dangers. Cornelius Blackwood had not forgotten his humiliation. If anything, the winter had only sharpened his hatred, honed it into something cold and patient and infinitely more dangerous than simple rage. He was done with rumors and whispers, done with half-measures and indirect attacks. This time, he would use the law itself as his weapon. The letter arrived on a gray morning in late March. Zeke read it in silence, his weathered face growing darker with every line. When he finally looked up, Emma saw something she had never seen in his eyes before. Fear. "What is it?" she asked. "Blackwood has hired a lawyer from Helena." Zeke's voice was flat. "They are petitioning the territorial court to investigate the suitability of my guardianship, claiming I lack proper documentation, claiming a single man cannot adequately care for multiple children, claiming—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "Claiming what Daniel demanded, claiming that my intentions toward you children may be improper." The words hung in the air like poison. "That is a lie." Samuel's voice shook with anger. "That is a filthy lie. Of course it is a lie, but lies do not have to be true to destroy someone. They just have to be believed." Zeke set down the letter. "The hearing is scheduled for November, in Helena. A judge will decide whether I am fit to continue as your guardian. And if he decides you are not," Ruby's small voice trembled, "then they will take you away." Zeke did not soften the truth. "They will send you back to the orphanage system. Or worse." "No." Emma stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "No, we will not let that happen. We will fight." "How?" Daniel asked. "We are just children. Nobody listens to children, then we make them listen." Emma's eyes blazed with a fire that had been building inside her for months. "We show them who we really are. We show them what this family means. And we do not stop fighting until we win." The months that followed were the hardest of Emma's life. Zeke hired a lawyer of his own, a man named Thomas Whitfield, who had a reputation for honesty and a genuine concern for children caught in the grinding gears of the legal system. But even Whitfield admitted the odds were not good. "Public sentiment is against you," he told Zeke during one of their meetings. A wealthy man, unmarried, taking in orphans from across the territory. "People are suspicious by nature. Blackwood has been feeding those suspicions for months." "What can we do?" Zeke asked. "Prove them wrong. Show the community who you really are. Let them see these children. Let them see that they are healthy, happy, loved." And so began what Emma would later call the summer of open doors. They invited neighbors to dinner. They hosted gatherings after church. They opened the ranch to anyone who wanted to see how the children lived, where they slept, what they ate. They answered every question, no matter how intrusive. They smiled until their faces ached and explained until their throats were raw. Some people came with genuine curiosity and left as friends. Others came with suspicion and left with grudging respect. A few came with malice and left with nothing to report. But through it all, Blackwood kept watching, kept waiting, kept gathering ammunition for the battle to come. In May, a new child arrived. Her name was Lily Grace, and she was 7 years old. A farmer found her walking along the main road outside of Missoula, barefoot and sunburned, and unable to remember anything about herself except her name. The doctor said it was shock. Sometimes, he explained, when the mind experiences something too terrible to bear, it simply erases the memory, protects itself by forgetting. Lily Grace had forgotten everything: where she came from, who her parents were, what had happened to her. All she knew was her name and a bone-deep terror of being alone. She woke screaming every night for the first 2 weeks. Emma held her through every nightmare, rocking her gently, whispering the same words over and over. "You are safe. You are not alone. I am here. I am not leaving." Slowly, painfully, Lily Grace began to heal. She followed Emma everywhere like a shadow, clutching the older girl's hand, as if letting go would mean falling into some terrible void. She did not speak much, but when she did, her voice was soft and sweet and filled with a desperate need to be loved. In July, another child came. Tobias Jenkins was 9 years old, the son of a Cherokee woman and a white father who had abandoned them both when Tobias was still a baby. His mother had raised him alone, teaching him the ways of her people, until tuberculosis took her in the spring. Neither community would claim him after that. The white settlers saw him as too Indian, the Cherokee saw him as too white. He was caught between two worlds belonging to neither, wanted by none. He showed up at the Silver Creek gate one morning with a small bundle over his shoulder and a look in his eyes that said he expected to be turned away. "I can work," he said before anyone could speak. "I am strong. I can earn my keep. Just give me a chance." "You do not have to earn anything here," Zeke replied. "You just have to want a home." Tobias stared at him for a long moment, searching for the lie that was not there. Then his shoulders sagged, and for the first time in months he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world was not entirely cruel. By October, there were 6 children at Silver Creek Ranch: Emma, Daniel, Samuel, Ruby, Lily, Grace, and Tobias. 6 stories, 6 wounds, 6 lives that had been thrown away by the world and caught by one man with enough love left in his broken heart to give them all a home. But time was running out. The hearing was scheduled for November 20th, 1888, 1 month away. And despite everything they had done, despite all the dinners and gatherings and open doors, the outcome was far from certain. Then, on the first day of November, a wagon appeared on the road to Silver Creek. Emma saw it from the porch where she was helping Lily Grace practice her letters. A black wagon, well made, pulled by 2 strong horses, not the kind of wagon farmers drove. This was something else. She watched as Zeke walked out to meet it, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. Watched as a man in a priest's collar stepped down from the driver's seat. Watched as they spoke in low voices too quiet for her to hear. And then she watched as a small figure climbed down from the back of the wagon. A boy, maybe 6 years old, brown hair, brown eyes. A small birthmark shaped like a star just below his left ear. Emma's heart stopped. It could not be. It was impossible. He was dead. They had told her he was dead. 3 years ago, when she was first sent to the orphanage, they had told her that her baby brother had gotten sick and died, and she would never see him again. But there he was, standing in the yard, looking around with wide, frightened eyes, looking at her. "Emma!" His voice cracked. "Is that really you?" She was off the porch before she knew she was moving, running faster than she had ever run in her life, faster than when she had fled from Mildred Crane's wagon, faster than when she had walked through the blizzard. She reached him and dropped to her knees and grabbed him so hard she probably hurt him, but she did not care. She did not care about anything except the miracle standing in front of her. "William." The name tore out of her throat. "William. They told me you were dead." He was crying now, his small body shaking with sobs. "They said you got adopted, and then you died, and I would never see you again. They told me the same thing." Emma was crying too, tears streaming down her face, 3 years of grief and loss and loneliness pouring out of her in a flood she could not control. "They said you got sick. They said you did not make it. I am here." William clutched her with desperate strength. "I am here, Emma. I found you." Father Thomas Brennan, the priest who had brought William from a mission school in Missouri, explained everything later that evening. "The boy came to us 2 years ago," he said, "transferred from an orphanage in Montana. He always talked about his sister Emma, said she was the bravest person he knew, said she would come find him someday." He looked at Emma with kind eyes. "I tried to locate you through the orphanage records, but they showed you as adopted and then deceased. It was only when I heard about a man in Montana taking in orphans, a man with a daughter named Emma, that I thought it might be worth investigating. You came all the way from Missouri." Zeke's voice was rough with emotion, on the chance that it might be her. "I came because a little boy has been praying every night for 3 years to see his sister again." Father Brennan smiled. Some prayers deserve to be answered. That night Emma sat beside William's bed and watched him sleep. Her brother, her baby brother. The last piece of her real family, the family she had thought was gone forever. He was here. He was alive. He was home. "I thought I lost you," she whispered into the darkness. "I thought I lost everything. But you were out there the whole time, waiting for me, believing in me." William stirred in his sleep, and his small hand reached out and found hers. "I knew you would come," he murmured. "I always knew." Emma bent down and kissed his forehead. "I am never letting you go again," she promised. Never. The months between William's arrival and the November hearing brought 2 more children to Silver Creek. Lily Grace came in May, a 7-year-old girl with golden hair and empty eyes. A farmer found her wandering the main road outside Missoula barefoot and sunburned, unable to remember anything about herself except her name. The doctor called it shock, said the mind sometimes protected itself by erasing memories too terrible to bear. Emma held her through the screaming nightmares, whispered the same words over and over until they became true. "You are safe. You are not alone. I am here." Tobias Jenkins arrived in July. 9 years old, half Cherokee on his mother's side, caught between 2 worlds that both rejected him. His white father had abandoned them. His mother had died of tuberculosis in the spring. Neither community would claim him after that. He showed up at the gate with a small bundle over his shoulder and eyes that expected to be turned away. "I can work," he said. "I can earn my keep." "You do not have to earn anything here," Zeke replied. "You just have to want a home." 7 children now, 7 stories, 7 lives gathered up from the wreckage of a world that threw away what it did not want. And Cornelius Blackwood was about to try one more time to tear them all apart. The hearing took place in Helena on a gray November morning. The courtroom was packed. Farmers and ranchers from across the valley had come to see the outcome. Some of them supported Zeke. Others were there for the spectacle. And in the front row, his face cold with anticipation, sat Cornelius Blackwood. Judge Arthur Whitmore presided. He was an old man with a white beard and eyes that had seen too much of the worst that humanity had to offer. He looked tired. He looked skeptical. He looked like a man who had stopped believing in happy endings a long time ago. "This court will come to order," his voice echoed through the chamber. "We are here to determine the suitability of one Ezekiel Morgan to continue as legal guardian of 7 minor children. Mr. Finch, you may present your case." Harold Finch, Blackwood's lawyer, was a fat man with shrewd eyes and a voice like honey over broken glass. He spent an hour painting a picture of suspicion and impropriety of a wealthy hermit collecting orphans for purposes unknown, of a situation that any reasonable person would find disturbing. When he was finished, he looked at the judge with satisfied confidence. "The state moves that these children be removed from Mr. Morgan's care immediately and placed in proper institutional custody until more suitable arrangements can be made." Judge Whitmore turned to Zeke's lawyer. "Mr. Whitfield, your response." Thomas Whitfield stood. "Your Honor, I could present documents and testimonies and character witnesses, and I will if the court requires it. But first, I would like to call a witness who can speak more eloquently than any lawyer about what life at Silver Creek Ranch is really like." He turned toward the gallery. "I call Emma Rose Morgan." Emma walked to the witness stand with her head held high. She had faced blizzards and abandonment and men who wanted to destroy everything she loved. She was not afraid of a courtroom. State your name for the record. Emma Rose Morgan, formerly Emma Rose Hartley. And how did you come to live at Silver Creek Ranch? Emma looked out at the crowded courtroom, looked at Blackwood's cold eyes, looked at the judge's skeptical face, looked at her family sitting together in the gallery, 6 children and 3 adults who had become her whole world. And she told her story. She told them about her father dying in the mine collapse, about 3 years in the orphanage, about Mildred Crane and the frozen bread, and the wagon driving away into the white. She told them about walking through the blizzard with bare feet leaving blood in the snow, about wanting to give up, about lying in the snow and almost letting go. She told them about a man on a horse who did not have to stop, who had no reason to care about a dying orphan on a frozen road, who stopped anyway. She told them about learning to trust again, about Daniel and Ruby and Samuel and Lily Grace and Tobias and William, about a house full of children who had been thrown away by the world and caught by one man with a heart big enough to love them all. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. Judge Whitmore leaned forward. Miss Morgan, in your opinion, is Mr. Morgan a suitable guardian for you and the other children? Emma looked at Zeke, looked at this man who had given her everything, who had shown her that she was worth something, who had taught her that family was not about blood, but about choice. He is the best man I have ever known, she said simply. He saved my life, not just from the blizzard, from despair, from believing that I was worthless, from giving up on the world. She turned back to the judge. If you take us away from him, you will not be saving us. You will be destroying us, because Silver Creek is not just a ranch, it is a home. The first real home any of us have ever had. And Zeke Morgan is not just our guardian, he is our father, in every way that matters. One by one, the other children took the stand. Daniel told them about the fire that took his parents and the man who gave him a reason to hope again. Samuel told them about being called bad blood and learning that he could choose who he wanted to be. Ruby told them about being cold and scared and finding a place where she finally felt warm. Lily Grace could not remember her past, but she could describe her present, a home where she was loved, a family that would never let her go. Tobias told them about being caught between 2 worlds and finding a place where he finally belonged. And William, the youngest, the miracle, stood before the court and said only one thing: I want to stay with my sister. She is the only family I have left. Please do not take me away from her again. When the testimony was finished, Judge Whitmore sat in silence for a long moment. Then he looked at Cornelius Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood, I have heard a great deal today about your concerns regarding these children, but I have also heard something else. I have heard 7 young people speak with clarity and conviction about a man who has given them hope, given them love, given them a future. His voice hardened. I have been a judge for 30 years. I have seen true abuse, true neglect, true evil. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that what I see at Silver Creek Ranch is none of those things. What I see is a family, unconventional perhaps, but a family nonetheless. He brought down his gavel. This court finds that Ezekiel Morgan is fit to continue as legal guardian of all 7 children currently in his care. Case dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Emma ran to Zeke and threw her arms around him. The other children followed, piling on in a tangle of tears and laughter and relief. Even Henrietta and Marcus joined in, their weathered faces wet with emotion. They had won. Against all odds, against all opposition, against a man who had spent 30 years trying to destroy them. They had won. Outside the courthouse, as the family walked toward their wagon, a voice called out, "Morgan!" Zeke turned. Cornelius Blackwood stood alone on the courthouse steps, his face unreadable. For a moment nobody moved. Then Blackwood walked toward them. His steps were slow, heavy, like a man carrying a weight he could no longer bear. He stopped a few feet away and looked at Ruby, stared at her for a long moment, his cold eyes softening into something Emma had never seen before. She has her mother's hands, he said quietly. Martha Henderson. I knew her, a long time ago. Emma felt Zeke stiffen beside her. Martha was... Blackwood's voice cracked. She was supposed to be mine, before my father made me marry someone else, someone with money, someone proper." He looked up at Zeke. "I spent 30 years hating your family, 30 years trying to take back what I thought was mine. But watching those children today, hearing what they said about you—" He shook his head. "You built something I never could, something real, something good." "What are you saying?" Zeke asked cautiously. "I am saying I was wrong." The words seemed to cost him everything, about all of it, "and I am sorry." Silence. "I do not expect you to forgive me," Blackwood continued. "I do not deserve it, but I wanted you to know, and I wanted to ask—" He looked at Ruby again. "If I could see her sometimes, not as anything, just as an old man who wants to remember the woman he should have married." Zeke looked at Emma. She looked back at him. "That is Ruby's decision," Emma said finally, "not ours." Blackwood nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He turned and walked away into the gray November afternoon. Emma watched him go, this man who had been their enemy for so long, and she felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. That night back at Silver Creek Ranch, the family gathered around the big table for dinner. 7 children, 3 adults, 10 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful out of their broken pieces. I want to say something. Zeke stood at the head of the table, his gray eyes bright with unshed tears. "Today we won a battle, but this family, what we have here, this is not about winning battles. This is about something bigger." He looked around at each of them in turn. Charlotte always said that family is not about blood, it is about choice, about showing up for each other day after day, no matter what, about loving people not because you have to, but because you want to. His voice grew thick with emotion. "Every one of you chose to be here, chose to trust when trust was the hardest thing in the world, chose to love when love had only ever brought you pain. That is braver than anything I have ever done, and I am proud of every single one of you." He raised his glass. "To family. Not the one we were born into, the one we built. To family." 9 voices echoed back, and in that moment, surrounded by warmth and light and love, Emma knew that she had found what she had been searching for her whole life. Home, not just a place, but a feeling, a belonging, a certainty that no matter what happened, she would never be alone again. Outside the window, snow had begun to fall, soft and gentle now, not like the blizzard that had nearly killed her a year ago. This snow was peaceful, beautiful, a reminder that even the coldest seasons eventually gave way to warmth. Emma looked at William sitting beside her, at Daniel and Ruby across the table, at Samuel and Lily Grace and Tobias, laughing at something Marcus had said. She looked at Zeke, this man who had stopped in a snowstorm to save a dying child, who had opened his heart again after losing everything, who had taught her that love was worth the risk, always. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered so quietly that only he could hear. Zeke reached over and squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Emma Rose, for teaching an old man how to live again." The fire crackled, the snow fell, and at Silver Creek Ranch a family gathered around a table that had once been empty, filling it with laughter and love and the promise of all the years to come. This was their legacy, not the land, not the money, not the cattle, or the horses, or the house. This moment, this love, this choice to be a family. And it was worth everything. December 1888. 1 year since Emma Rose Hartley walked through a blizzard and became Emma Rose Morgan. The anniversary passed quietly, marked by a special dinner and a few words spoken around the fire. But Emma did not need grand celebrations. She had something better. She had a family that gathered every evening in the warm kitchen, passing bread and sharing stories, laughing at jokes that only made sense because they had lived through so much together. 7 children now called Silver Creek home. 7 stories of abandonment and loss and survival. 7 lives that had been discarded by the world and gathered up by one man with a heart big enough to hold them all. But even the strongest hearts eventually grow tired. Emma noticed it first in small ways. The way Zeke moved a little slower in the mornings, the way he paused to catch his breath after climbing the stairs, the way his hands sometimes trembled when he thought no one was watching. She told herself it was nothing. He was 59 years old. Men that age got tired sometimes. It did not mean anything, but the cough started in January. At first it was just a tickle, a clearing of the throat after meals, a soft rasp in his voice when he spoke too long. Nothing to worry about, Zeke insisted, just the dry winter air. By February the cough had teeth. It came in fits now, deep and wet and violent, doubling him over and leaving him gasping for breath. He tried to hide it from the children, excusing himself to the barn or the back porch, but Emma heard him through the walls at night, heard the racking spasms that shook his body, heard the silence that followed heavy with exhaustion and something else, something that sounded like surrender. "You need to see a doctor," Emma told him one morning after a particularly bad fit. "I have seen doctors." Zeke wiped his mouth with a handkerchief, and Emma pretended not to notice the red stain on the white cloth. "They do not know anything." "Then see a different doctor. See a doctor from Helena, from Missoula, from anywhere." "Emma." His voice was gentle but firm, the voice of a man who had already made peace with something she was not ready to accept. Some things cannot be fixed. Some things just have to be endured. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream and cry and shake him until he promised to fight. But the look in his gray eyes stopped her cold. He already knew, had known for a while probably, and he was not afraid. That scared her more than anything. The doctor came from Helena in March, a young man with round spectacles and a serious face carrying a black bag full of instruments that promised nothing good. He spent 2 hours with Zeke behind closed doors. Emma sat in the hallway with the other children, all of them silent, all of them afraid to voice the questions burning in their minds. When the doctor finally emerged, his face told them everything they needed to know. His heart. The doctor spoke quietly to Henrietta and Marcus, but Emma heard every word. "It is failing. Could be months, could be years, no way to know for certain. Is there anything you can do?" Henrietta's voice cracked. "Keep him comfortable. Make sure he rests. And prepare yourselves for the possibility that he may not have as much time as you would like." The doctor left. The house fell silent, and Emma felt the ground crumbling beneath her feet once again. That night she found Zeke sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the stars. "You should be in bed," she said. "Probably." He did not turn around. "But the stars are beautiful tonight. Seems a shame to miss them." Emma sat down beside him. The cold bit into her skin, but she did not care. "You heard what the doctor said." Zeke spoke matter-of-factly. "About my heart, I heard." "Good. Then we do not have to pretend." He finally looked at her, and his gray eyes were calm. Peaceful, even. "I have had a good life, Emma. Better than I deserved, most likely. And these last 2 years with you and the children, they have been the best of all." "Do not talk like that." Her voice broke. "Do not talk like you are already gone. I am not gone yet. But I will be someday. And when that day comes, I need to know that you will be all right, that all of you will be all right." Emma wanted to tell him that she would never be all right, that losing him would break her into pieces she could not put back together, that she had already lost too much and could not bear to lose anything else. But she looked at his face, at the love and concern written in every line and wrinkle, and she understood what he needed to hear. "We will be all right," she said quietly, "because you taught us how to be. You taught us how to survive, how to love, how to be a family." Zeke reached over and took her hand. His grip was weaker than it used to be, but still warm, still steady. "I need you to promise me something," Emma rose. "Anything. When I am gone, I need you to take care of them. All of them. Daniel and Ruby and Samuel and Lily Grace and Tobias and William. This family that we built together, I need you to keep it alive." Emma felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "I promise. And I need you to remember something else." He squeezed her hand. "Something important. What you were never worthless, not for one single moment of your life. You were always precious, always valuable, always deserving of love. The world just forgot to tell you." He smiled through his own tears. "But I never forgot. And I need you to carry that truth with you after I am gone. Carry it and share it with every child who comes through these doors. Tell them what I told you. Tell them they matter. Tell them they are worth fighting for." "I will." Emma leaned against his shoulder. "I promise. I will tell them. Every single one. They sat together in the cold, watching the stars wheel overhead, saying nothing more because nothing more needed to be said. The months that followed were a strange mixture of joy and sorrow, of living and preparing for loss. Zeke had good days and bad days. On the good days, he rode out with Marcus to check the fences. He taught the children how to rope and brand and read the weather in the clouds. He sat by the fire in the evenings telling stories about his younger days, about Charlotte and Rosalie, about the dreams he had carried, and the mistakes he had made, and the grace he had found in unexpected places. On the bad days, he stayed in bed. The cough would tear through him like a wild animal, leaving him pale and exhausted and struggling for every breath. Emma would sit beside him on those days, reading aloud from the books he loved holding his hand, when the pain became too much. The children handled it in different ways. Daniel threw himself into work, spending long hours in the barn, and Fields channeling his fear into motion. Ruby became quiet, her laughter fading into a soft sadness that broke Emma's heart. Samuel prayed every night, kneeling beside his bed, bargaining with God for more time. Lily Grace clung to Emma more tightly than ever, her small hand always reaching for reassurance. Tobias retreated into himself, his dark eyes guarded against the grief he knew was coming. And William. William did not understand death. He only knew that his new father was sick, and that everyone around him was sad, and that the world he had just found might be about to crumble again. "Is Papa going to die?" he asked Emma one night, his voice small and afraid. Emma wanted to lie, wanted to protect him from the truth, the way she had always tried to protect him from pain. But she remembered what Zeke had taught her about honesty, about treating children like people who deserved to know the truth. "Yes," she said gently. "Someday, maybe soon, maybe not for a long time, but someday." William's lower lip trembled. "I do not want him to go. Neither do I." Emma pulled him close. "But you know what? Even when people leave, the love they gave us stays. It stays right here." She pressed her hand against his chest. "In our hearts, where no one can ever take it away. Promise, I promise." William curled against her, his small body relaxing as sleep began to claim him. "I love you, Emma," he murmured. "I love you too, little brother, more than anything in the world." Summer came and went. Fall painted the valley in gold and red, and Zeke Morgan continued to hold on, stubbornly refusing to leave until he was absolutely certain his family would survive without him. He spent hours with Emma teaching her about the ranch, the finances, the contracts, the relationships with neighbors and suppliers and buyers, everything she would need to know to keep Silver Creek running when he was gone. "You are too young for this burden," he told her one afternoon, his voice thick with regret. 17 years old. You should be thinking about dresses and dances and young men, not running a ranch." "I have never been young," Emma replied. "You know that. And I would rather carry this burden than any other. Because this burden is love. This burden is family, and that is worth more than all the dresses and dances in the world." Zeke smiled through his tears. "When did you become so wise? I had a good teacher." On the morning of December 10th, 1893, years after he had found a dying girl in a blizzard, Ezekiel Morgan did not wake up. Henrietta found him first. She had come to bring him his morning coffee, and she knew before she even reached the bed, the stillness in the room, the peace on his face, the way the morning light fell across his silver hair like a benediction. She did not scream, did not cry out. She simply stood there for a long moment, looking at the man who had given her a home and a purpose when she had lost everything. Then she went to find Emma. They buried him beneath the old oak tree on the hill overlooking the ranch, the same tree where Charlotte and Rosalie rested, the same view he had loved most in the world. The whole valley came to the funeral, farmers and ranchers who had known him for decades, townspeople who had watched him transform from a grieving widower into a father of 7. Even Sheriff Caldwell came standing at the back with his hat in his hands, his weathered face wet with unexpected tears. Emma spoke last. She stood before the gathered crowd, her 7 siblings beside her, and looked out at the faces of people who had become her community, her neighbors, her extended family. "Ezekiel Morgan saved my life," she began, "not just once, but every day. He found me dying in a snowstorm and gave me a home. He found me broken and convinced I was worthless and gave me the truth about who I really was. She looked at Daniel and Ruby at Samuel, and Lily Grace at Tobias and William. He did the same for all of us, every child who came through those doors, every wounded soul who had been thrown away by the world. He gathered us up and loved us and showed us that we mattered. Her voice grew stronger. Some people measure a man's life by what he accumulated, his land, his money, his possessions. But those things do not matter in the end. What matters is what you leave behind in the hearts of others. And by that measure, Ezekiel Morgan was the richest man who ever lived. She bent down and picked up a handful of earth. Rest now, Papa. You have earned it. We will take it from here. We will keep your dream alive. We will fill this house with children who need love the same way you filled our hearts with hope. And every time we sit down to dinner, we will set a place for you, because you will always be with us, always. She let the earth fall onto the coffin. Goodbye, Papa. Thank you for everything. In the years that followed, more children came. 5 more before Zeke's death brought the number to 12. Lily Grace and Tobias had been joined by others whose names would become part of Silver Creek's growing legacy. The days after the funeral were the hardest Emma had ever faced. She woke each morning expecting to hear his voice, caught herself turning toward the study to ask his opinion, reached for his hand at dinner before remembering it would not be there, but she did not collapse, did not retreat, did not let the grief swallow her whole, because she had made a promise. And Emma Rose Morgan kept her promises. She threw herself into running the ranch with a determination that surprised everyone except Henrietta, who had always known what the girl was capable of. She managed the finances, negotiated with buyers, supervised the hands, made decisions that men twice her age would have struggled with, and every night she gathered her siblings around the table and reminded them of who they were. "We are Morgans," she told them, not by blood, but by choice. And Morgans do not give up. Morgans do not quit. Morgans stand up and keep fighting no matter how hard it gets. Daniel became her right hand, taking over the day-to-day operations of the ranch with a maturity that belied his 18 years. Samuel found his calling in the horses, developing a reputation as the best trainer in the valley. Ruby discovered a gift for music, filling the house with piano melodies that made the walls feel less empty. Lily Grace slowly came out of her shell, her lost memories replaced by new ones full of love. Tobias used his knowledge of the land to become an invaluable guide for settlers passing through. And William grew tall and strong and kind, the living embodiment of everything Zeke had believed in. 3 years passed, then 5, then 10. The children of Silver Creek grew up. Some stayed on the ranch. Others ventured out into the world, carrying with them the lessons they had learned around that big wooden table. Daniel married a school teacher from town and built a house on the north pasture. Ruby became a music teacher, traveling to other ranches to give lessons to children who had never touched a piano. Samuel started his own horse breeding operation, his animals sought after from Montana to Texas. Lily Grace became a nurse, dedicating her life to caring for others the way she had been cared for. Tobias guided expeditions through the mountains, sharing his Cherokee mother's wisdom with anyone willing to listen. And William stayed at Silver Creek with Emma, helping her run the ranch, greeting the new children who continued to arrive at their door. Because that was the part of Zeke's dream that Emma refused to let die. Every child who needed a home, every wounded soul who had been thrown away by the world. She gathered them up just as Zeke had gathered her. By 1898, 23 children had passed through the doors of Silver Creek Ranch. Some stayed forever. Others moved on to build lives of their own. But all of them carried the same truth in their hearts. They mattered. They were valuable. They deserved to be loved. On December 15, 1898, exactly 11 years after a freezing girl had been saved from a blizzard, Emma stood on the porch of the ranch house and watched another wagon rolling up the drive. She was 21 years old now, a woman grown with scars on her hands from hard work and lines around her eyes from laughter and loss. She had buried her father and raised her siblings and saved more children than she could count, and she was not finished yet. The wagon stopped. A woman climbed down, her face drawn with exhaustion. And behind her, wrapped in thin blankets, two small figures huddled together against the cold. "Please," the woman's voice cracked. "I heard there was a place for children who have nowhere else to go." "Is it true?" Emma walked down the porch steps, her boots crunching in the snow. She looked at those two small faces, saw the fear in their eyes, the hunger, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. She saw herself 11 years ago standing in a blizzard with bloody feet and a broken heart, and she smiled. "Welcome to Silver Creek Ranch," she said. "You are safe now. You're home." The snow fell softly around them, gentle and white, covering the world in a blanket of peace. And somewhere up on the hill beneath the old oak tree, Ezekiel Morgan smiled too. His dream lived on. His family endured. His love passed from heart to heart across the years would never die. Because that was the real legacy of Silver Creek Ranch. Not the land or the money or the cattle. Love. Love that healed wounds. Love that built families. Love that turned throwaway children into people who mattered. And it was worth everything. December 1898. 11 years since the blizzard. 8 years since Zeke Morgan closed his eyes for the last time beneath the old oak tree. Emma Rose Morgan stood at the window of the study that had once been her father's, watching snowfall over the valley she had learned to call home. She was 21 years old now, though most days she felt twice that age. Running a ranch, raising children, carrying the weight of a legacy that grew heavier with each passing year. 23 children had come through the doors of Silver Creek since Zeke's death. Some stayed. Some moved on. All of them left changed, carrying pieces of the love they had found here out into a world that desperately needed it. But Emma knew the truth that she never spoke aloud. She was tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that sleep could not fix. The kind of tired that came from giving and giving and giving until there was almost nothing left. Almost, but not quite. Because every time she thought about stopping, about letting someone else carry the burden, she would see another child standing at the gate. Another pair of frightened eyes. Another soul that the world had discarded like garbage. And she would remember what Zeke had told her on that cold night so many years ago. You were never worthless, not for one single moment of your life. If she stopped, who would tell them that truth? Who would catch them when they fell? So she kept going. One day at a time, one child at a time, one small act of love after another, building something that she hoped would outlast her. The knock on the study door pulled her from her thoughts. "Emma." William's voice was tight with concern. "There is someone here to see you. Who? A lawyer. From Helena. He says it is urgent." Emma's stomach tightened. Lawyers rarely brought good news. She had learned that lesson during the terrible months before Zeke's final court victory, when Cornelius Blackwood had tried to tear their family apart. Blackwood was dead now, passed away 3 years ago in his sleep. His son had inherited the neighboring ranch and maintained a cautious peace with Silver Creek. But old wounds had a way of reopening when you least expected them. "Send him in." The man who entered was young, perhaps 25, with wire-rimmed spectacles, and a nervous energy that suggested he was not comfortable delivering whatever message he carried. "Miss Morgan." He clutched a leather satchel against his chest like a shield. "My name is Theodore Walsh. I represent the law firm of Hartley and Associates in Helena." "Hartley." Emma's heart stuttered. That was her birth name, the name she had carried before Zeke gave her a new one. Is this some kind of joke? "No, ma'am." The young lawyer shifted his weight. "I am here regarding a matter of inheritance, specifically the estate of one Margaret Rose Hartley." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Margaret Rose Hartley had been her mother. The woman who died giving birth to William 20 years ago. The woman Emma had never known, had only heard about in whispered fragments from her father before the mind took him too. "My mother has been dead for 20 years. Emma's voice came out harder than she intended. What possible inheritance could there be? Theodore Walsh opened his satchel and withdrew a thick envelope sealed with red wax. "Your mother came from a wealthy family in Boston. Miss Morgan, the Ashford family. Old money, very old money. When she eloped with your father, a common miner, her family disowned her, cut her off completely. Emma knew this part of the story. Her father had told her once, his voice thick with old guilt, how Margaret had given up everything to be with him, how her family had refused to acknowledge the marriage or any children that came from it. What I did not know until recently, Walsh continued, is that your mother's father, Cornelius Ashford, changed his will on his deathbed. He died 6 months ago, and he left everything to his only living descendants. He held out the envelope. That would be you and your brother William. Miss Morgan, you have inherited approximately $400,000, plus properties in Boston and New York. The number hung in the air like something impossible. $400,000. In 1898, that was not just wealth. That was empire. That was power beyond anything Emma had ever imagined. There must be some mistake. There is no mistake. I have verified the documents myself. The will is ironclad. Your grandfather spent the last years of his life trying to find you, trying to make amends for how he treated your mother. He hired investigators, traced your family from Butte to Helena to here. Walsh's voice softened. He knew about Silver Creek, about what you have built here, about the children you have saved. His final letter addressed to you expresses his profound regret, and his hope that this inheritance will allow you to continue your work on a scale he could never have imagined. Emma stared at the envelope in her hands. The wax seal bore an elaborate crest she did not recognize. The paper was thick and expensive, the kind of paper that important documents were written on. $400,000, enough to expand Silver Creek tenfold, enough to build new dormitories and hire more staff and take in every abandoned child in Montana Territory, enough to turn Zeke's dream into something that could never be destroyed, enough to change everything. The news spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Within hours everyone knew, Henrietta and Marcus, Daniel and Ruby and Samuel, all the children who currently called the ranch home, even the hands who worked the cattle and mended the fences. Emma gathered them in the big dining room that evening, standing at the head of the long table that Zeke had built with his own hands so many years ago. I know you have all heard the news, she began, and I know you have questions. I have questions too. But here is what I want you to understand. She looked around at the faces watching her, some curious, some worried, some hopeful. This money does not change who we are. It does not change what we do. Silver Creek was built on love, not wealth, on family, not fortune. That will never change. But what will you do with it? Daniel asked. He was 23 now, a man grown with a wife and a child of his own. What does this mean for the ranch? Emma took a deep breath. It means we can do more. Take in more children. Build more buildings. Hire teachers and doctors and anyone else we need. It means we can turn this ranch into something that will last for generations. She paused. But it also means we will have enemies, people who want what we have, people who think we do not deserve it, people who will try to tear us down. We have faced enemies before. Samuel spoke up. His voice was quiet but steady. We beat Blackwood. We can beat anyone. This is different. Emma shook her head. Blackwood was one man with a grudge. This kind of money attracts a different kind of enemy. Lawyers, politicians, business people who see opportunity in our success. Then we will face them together. Ruby's voice rang out clear and strong. The way we always have, the way Papa taught us. Family, Tobias added. We are family. Nothing breaks family. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. These children she had helped raise, these siblings she had fought beside, they had become exactly what Zeke always believed they could be. Strong, brave, unshakable. All right, she said. Then we face it together, whatever comes. The first challenge came sooner than expected. 3 weeks after the inheritance was announced, a delegation arrived from Helena. 4 men in expensive suits riding in a polished carriage that looked absurdly out of place on the muddy roads of rural Montana. Their leader was a man named Horace Fletcher, a banker with cold eyes and a smile that never reached them. Miss Morgan. He did not offer his hand. I represent several prominent businessmen who have concerns about your situation. What concerns Emma stood on the porch arms, crossed William beside her. You are a young woman, unmarried, with no formal education in finance or business, and you have suddenly come into possession of a fortune that could destabilize the entire regional economy. Destabilize how Fletcher's smile tightened. You are using this money to take in orphans, street children, the refuse of society. Surely you understand how irregular this appears. Irregular. Emma's voice went flat. You mean charitable. I mean reckless. Fletcher stepped closer. There are institutions designed to handle such children. Workhouses, reform schools, proper facilities with proper oversight. What you are doing here is creating a den of, well, Fletcher spread his hands. Who knows what kind of people these children will become, raised without discipline, without proper authority, without the guiding hand of established society. Emma felt her blood beginning to boil. Let me tell you about these children, Mr. Fletcher. Every single one of them came here broken, starving, abused, abandoned. The established society you speak of threw them away like garbage, and now you stand here telling me that my way of helping them is wrong. I am telling you that there are rules, systems, ways that things are done, and I am telling you that your rules failed them. Emma's voice rose. Your systems failed them. They failed me. I walked through a blizzard with bare feet, because your proper institutions put me in the hands of a woman who tried to murder me through neglect. So do not stand on my porch and lecture me about the right way to save children. I have been saving them for 11 years. How many have you saved, Mr. Fletcher? The banker's face flushed red. Miss Morgan, I came here in good faith to discuss— No, you came here to intimidate me, to make me feel small and stupid and afraid. But I am none of those things. I am Emma Rose Morgan, and this is my home, and these are my children, and you have no power here. She stepped forward until she was inches from his face. Go back to Helena. Tell your prominent businessmen that Silver Creek is not for sale. Not now, not ever. And if they have concerns about how I spend my inheritance, they can write me a letter. I will use it to start the fire in the morning. Fletcher stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his eyes. Not respect exactly, but recognition, an acknowledgement that he had underestimated her. This is not over, Miss Morgan. It never is, Mr. Fletcher, but I am still here, and I am not going anywhere. The delegation left, but Emma knew they would be back. Men like Fletcher did not accept defeat gracefully. They would find other angles, other attacks, other ways to try to bring her down. She spent the next several months preparing. She hired lawyers of her own, good ones from firms that had no connection to the Helena business establishment. She brought in accountants to manage the inheritance, setting up trusts and foundations that would protect the money from legal challenges. She documented everything, every child who came through Silver Creek, every dollar spent, every improvement made, and she expanded. A new dormitory went up on the west side of the property, large enough to house 30 children. A schoolhouse followed, staffed by teachers she recruited from as far away as Boston. A small medical clinic came next, run by a young doctor named Elizabeth Chen, who had fled discrimination in San Francisco to find a place where her skills would be valued. By the summer of 1899, Silver Creek had transformed from a ranch that took in orphans to something much larger. A community, a sanctuary, a beacon of hope in a world that offered precious little to those who needed it most. Word spread. Children came from across the territory. Some walked for days to reach the gates. Others were brought by desperate parents who had nothing left to give. A few were literally left on the doorstep bundles in the night that were discovered at dawn. Emma turned none of them away. 43 children, then 50, then 60. The work was endless, the challenges constant. But for the first time since Zeke's death, Emma felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Real hope. The kind that did not need to be protected or hidden. The kind that could grow and spread and change the world. The attack came in October of 1899. Not lawyers this time, not businessmen with their polished smiles and veiled threats. Fire. Emma woke to screaming at 3 a.m. Orange light flickered against her window. The smell of smoke filled her lungs before she even opened her eyes. Fire. She was out of bed in an instant. Fire at Silver Creek. She ran outside in her nightgown, bare feet slapping against cold wood, and saw the new dormitory ablaze. Flames roared from every window, reaching toward the star-filled sky like hungry hands. Children. There were children in that building. Emma sprinted toward the inferno, but Marcus caught her before she could reach the door. "You cannot go in there." His voice was hoarse with smoke. "The structure is compromised. The whole thing could come down. There are children inside." Emma struggled against his grip. "Let me go. I have to—" William got them out. Marcus held her tight. "William and Daniel, they got everyone out. They are safe. Emma, they are safe." She stopped fighting, looked around the chaos of the yard, and there, huddled together near the well, wrapped in blankets and shivering in the cold, were the children from the dormitory, all of them, crying terrified, some of them coughing from smoke, but alive. Thank God. Emma's legs gave out beneath her. Marcus lowered her gently to the ground. Thank God. It took 3 hours to put out the fire. By dawn, the dormitory was nothing but charred timbers and smoldering ash. 6 months of work, thousands of dollars, gone in a single night. But no lives lost, not one. That was what mattered. That was all that mattered. The sheriff arrived by mid-morning. He walked through the wreckage with a grim expression, examining the burn patterns, taking notes in a small leather book. It was arson, he told Emma as they stood in the ruins. No question about it. Accelerant was used. Coal oil, most likely. Someone wanted this place to burn. Who? Sheriff Caldwell, the same man who had stood beside Zeke during the court battle so many years ago, shook his head. Could be anyone. You have made enemies, Miss Morgan, powerful people who do not like what you are doing here. Horace Fletcher. Maybe. Caldwell's voice was careful. Maybe not. Men like Fletcher do not usually get their own hands dirty. They hire people. So what do we do? You rebuild. Caldwell looked at her with something like admiration. That is what you do? You keep going? You do not let them win? Emma looked at the ashes, at the destruction, at the evidence that someone hated her enough to try to kill the children she had sworn to protect. And she felt something harden inside her, something that had been soft before, vulnerable, willing to believe that the world could be reasoned with. Not anymore. They want a fight, she said quietly. They will get one. The rebuilding began the next day. Emma did not hide, did not cower, did not give the arsonists the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. Instead, she made an announcement, published it in every newspaper in the territory. Silver Creek Ranch will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. We will not stop our work because cowards set fires in the night. For every building they burn, we will build 2 more. For every child they try to scare away, we will take in 10 more. They think they can destroy us with hate. They are wrong. We are built on love. And love does not burn. Donations flooded in. From farmers and ranchers who had known Zeke. From strangers who had only heard stories. From wealthy families in Boston and New York who had read about Silver Creek in the Eastern papers. Within a month, Emma had raised enough money to rebuild the dormitory twice over. Within 3 months, she had expanded the ranch to include a new wing of the main house, additional staff quarters, and a chapel where the children could gather for worship and community. The arsonists were never caught, but they never struck again. Perhaps they realized that Emma Rose Morgan could not be beaten, that every attack only made her stronger, that the love she had been given by Zeke Morgan and that she had passed on to so many others was an indestructible thing. Or perhaps they simply moved on to easier targets, weaker prey, people who did not have a family of 87 children standing behind them, ready to fight. Either way, Silver Creek endured. On December 15, 1899, exactly 12 years after Emma had walked through a blizzard and found her father, she stood on the hill beneath the old oak tree. Snow fell softly around her, dusting the graves of Zeke and Charlotte and Rosalie. The valley stretched out below Silver Creek Ranch, spread across it like a living thing, smoke rising from a dozen chimneys, children's laughter echoing up through the cold air. "We did it, Papa," Emma whispered. "We survived. We grew. We became everything you dreamed we could be." She knelt down and brushed snow from his headstone. "I wish you could see it. 87 children now, and more coming every month. Teachers and doctors and people who believe in what we are doing. A real community. A real family. She felt tears freezing on her cheeks. I still miss you. Every day. I still hear your voice in my head telling me to get up, to keep fighting, to remember that I matter. She pressed her hand against the cold stone. I promise I will never forget. And I promise I will never stop. Not until every child who needs a home has one. Not until every soul the world throws away knows they are precious. She stood up, looked out at the valley one more time. Thank you, Papa. For everything, for stopping in a blizzard, for seeing something in me worth saving, for teaching me that family is not about blood. It is about choice, about love, about showing up for each other no matter what. The wind picked up swirling snow around her like an embrace. I love you, she whispered, forever. Then Emma Rose Morgan walked back down the hill to the home she had built, the family she had raised, and the future she refused to let anyone take away. Because that was what Morgans did. They got up, they kept fighting, and they never ever gave up on love. December 15th, 1907. 20 years since the blizzard. Emma Rose Morgan stood on the porch of Silver Creek Ranch and watched the sun rise over the Bitterroot Valley. She was 30 years old now, though the gray streaks in her dark hair and the lines around her eyes told the story of a life lived harder and fuller than most people twice her age. 20 years. It seemed impossible. 20 years since a barefoot girl had walked through a snowstorm, leaving blood in the snow. 20 years since a stranger on a horse had stopped when he did not have to. 20 years since Emma Rose Hartley had died in that blizzard and Emma Rose Morgan had been born. The ranch spread out before her, transformed beyond anything she could have imagined on that frozen night so long ago. The original house still stood at the center, but it was surrounded now by dormitories and schoolhouses and workshops. A chapel rose against the morning sky, its white steeple catching the first golden light. Smoke curled from dozens of chimneys carrying the smell of breakfast and the promise of another day. 147 children called Silver Creek home now, 147 souls that the world had discarded and Emma had gathered up. Some had been here for years. Others had arrived just days ago, still wide-eyed and disbelieving that such a place could exist. They would learn, they always did. They would learn that they mattered, that they were precious, that they deserved love simply because they existed. That was the lesson Emma had spent 20 years teaching, the lesson Zeke had taught her in a single act of stopping when the whole world had passed her by. Mama. The voice came from behind her, soft and sleepy. Emma turned to see a small figure standing in the doorway wrapped in a quilt, rubbing tired eyes. Grace Elizabeth Morgan, 6 years old. Emma's daughter. Not by blood. Blood had nothing to do with family at Silver Creek. Grace had arrived 4 years ago, barely 2 years old, abandoned at the gate in the middle of a winter night, abandoned at the gate in the middle of the night, no more than a bundle of rags and hunger and desperate need. Emma had taken one look at her and known. This one was hers. You should be in bed, little one. Emma crouched down and opened her arms. Grace tumbled into them, warm and solid and smelling of soap and sleep. I had a bad dream. Grace's voice was muffled against Emma's shoulder. There was a storm, and you were gone. And I could not find you. Emma held her tighter. I am right here. I am not going anywhere. Promise. The word echoed through 20 years of memory. Emma had asked that same question once, standing in this very house, looking up at a silver-haired man who had just offered her the impossible gift of belonging. I promise. Emma kissed her daughter's forehead. I will always be here. Always. They stood together in the early morning light, mother and daughter, watching the ranch come alive around them. Doors opened. Children emerged, stretching and yawning, heading toward the dining hall for breakfast. Teachers crossed the yard with books under their arms. Farmhands led horses out of the stable, their breath fogging in the cold air. A community. A family. A living testament to what love could build when given room to grow. Come on. Emma lifted Grace onto her hip. Let us go get some breakfast. It is a special day today. What kind of special? Emma smiled. You will see. The dining hall was chaos and warmth the way it always was in the morning. Long tables stretched from one end of the building to the other, filled with children of every age and background. The noise was tremendous, a symphony of voices and laughter and clattering dishes. Emma carried Grace through the crowd, stopping to ruffle hair and answer questions and settle disputes with the ease of long practice. She knew every child by name, knew their stories, knew their fears and hopes and dreams. That was the secret Zeke had taught her. Not programs or policies or proper procedures, just knowing, just seeing, just treating every single child like they were the most important person in the world. Because they were, every one of them. She found her seat at the head of the main table, surrounded by the people who had become her family. William sat to her right, 26 years old now, tall and strong and kind, helping manage the ranch the way Daniel once had. Daniel and Ruby were there too, visiting from their own homes nearby, their children adding to the beautiful chaos. Samuel had ridden in from his horse ranch for the occasion. Lily Grace had arrived yesterday, taking time away from her nursing duties in Helena. Even Tobias had come down from the mountains, his weathered face breaking into a rare smile when he saw everyone gathered together. The original 7, together again. "Well?" Henrietta's voice cut through the noise, as commanding as ever, despite her 73 years. "Are we going to eat, or just stare at each other all day?" Laughter rippled around the table. Some things never changed. Henrietta Brooks still ran the kitchen like a general commanding an army, and nobody dared cross her. Emma bowed her head. "Lord," she began, and the room fell silent, "we thank you for this food, for this family, for 20 years of grace and love and second chances. We thank you for the man who started all of this, who saw a dying girl in a snowstorm and chose to stop. We thank you for everyone who has passed through these doors, for the lives that have been saved and the hearts that have been healed." She paused, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. "And we ask you to bless us for another 20 years, another 100 years. As long as there are children who need a home, let this place be here for them. Let the love we have built continue to grow. Let nothing ever destroy what we have created together." She lifted her head. "Amen. Amen." 150 voices echoed back. The meal began. Platters of eggs and bacon and fresh biscuits passed from hand to hand. Coffee flowed freely. Conversation rose and fell like the tide. Emma watched it all with a heart so full it ached. This was Zeke's dream. This moment, this gathering, this impossible family that had grown from one man's decision to stop for a child in need. He had planted the seed 20 years ago, and Emma had watered it with tears and sweat and more love than she had ever known she possessed. And now it was a forest, a living, breathing testament to the power of choice, the power of showing up, the power of believing that every single soul mattered. After breakfast, Emma gathered the original 7 on the porch. The air was crisp and cold, their breath forming clouds in the winter morning. Snow covered the valley in a blanket of white, and the mountains rose against the pale blue sky like ancient guardians watching over everything they had built. 20 years. Daniel shook his head in wonder. "Hard to believe. Feels like yesterday," Ruby agreed, "and also like a lifetime ago." Samuel leaned against the porch railing, his dark eyes thoughtful. "I still remember the day I got here, half dead from cold, convinced I was bad blood, convinced I would turn out just like my father. And look at you now." Lily Grace bumped his shoulder affectionately. "Best horse trainer in Montana. Husband, father, pillar of the community." Samuel smiled. "Still feels like a miracle sometimes, like I am living someone else's life." "It is your life." Emma spoke softly. "You earned it. Every single day you chose to be something different than what people expected. That is not a miracle. That is strength." She looked around at all of them, her siblings, her family, the broken children who had become extraordinary adults. "I want you to know something," she said, "something I have been thinking about for a long time." They waited, watching her with eyes that held 20 years of shared history. "When Papa died, I made him a promise." Emma's voice thickened with emotion. "I promised I would keep this family together, keep his dream alive, take care of all of you and all the children who came after." She took a deep breath. "But I could not have done it alone. None of this would exist without each of you." Daniel, you managed the ranch when I was too overwhelmed to think straight. Ruby, your music healed hearts I could not reach. Samuel, you gave us horses and laughter and proof that the past does not define us. Lily Grace, you showed us how to care for bodies and souls. Tobias, you kept us connected to the land and to wisdom older than any of us. And William. She turned to her brother, her only blood relative, the miracle who had found his way back to her against all odds. You reminded me every single day why we do this. Because family is worth fighting for. Because love is worth everything. William reached over and took her hand. We are Morgans, he said simply. That is what we do. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. That is what we do. The ceremony took place that afternoon beneath the old oak tree. A new headstone had been placed beside Zeke's, not for a person, but for a promise. Carved into the granite were words that Emma had chosen with care. Silver Creek Ranch, founded 1887. For every child who needs a home, for every soul the world forgets, love lives here forever. Emma stood before the gathered crowd, 150 children and 24 staff and visitors from across the territory who had come to witness this moment. 20 years ago today, she began. A man named Ezekiel Morgan found a dying girl in a blizzard. He did not have to stop. He did not know her. He owed her nothing, but he stopped anyway. He lifted her onto his horse and carried her home and told her that she mattered. She looked out at the sea of faces watching her. So many stories, so many wounds, so many lives that had been transformed by the simple act of being seen. That girl was me, and that moment changed everything. Not just for me, but for all of us standing here today, because Zeke Morgan did not just save one child, he planted a seed that grew into a family, and that family grew into a community, and that community grew into something that will outlast all of us. She gestured to the headstone. This stone marks a promise that as long as Silver Creek stands, no child will be turned away, no soul will be forgotten, no one will ever have to walk through a blizzard alone. Her voice rose, carrying across the valley. We are not an orphanage. We are not an institution. We are a family built not on blood, but on choice, on love, on the radical belief that every single person has value, has worth, has a right to belong. She looked up at the sky, at the snow beginning to fall, at the clouds that looked so much like they had on that night 20 years ago. Papa, she whispered, I kept my promise. I built what you dreamed of, and I will keep building until my last breath. Then she turned back to the crowd. This is not the end of our story. This is just the beginning. 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, children will still be coming through these gates. And they will be welcomed. They will be loved. They will be told the same truth that Zeke Morgan told me on the night he saved my life. She spread her arms wide, embracing all of them, every child and adult and soul who had ever found refuge within these walls. You matter. You are precious. You are worth fighting for. You are home. The crowd erupted in cheers. Children rushed forward to hug her, to thank her, to tell her that they loved her. Staff members wiped tears from their eyes. The original 7 gathered around her in a circle, holding hands connected by bonds stronger than any blood could forge. And above them all, the snow fell softly, gently, like a benediction from heaven. That night, after the celebrations had ended and the children had gone to bed, Emma walked alone to the top of the hill. The valley lay spread out below her Silver Creek Ranch, glowing with light against the darkness. She could see the dormitories, the schoolhouses, the chapel, the dining hall. She could see smoke rising from chimneys and lanterns flickering in windows. She could see home. She knelt beside Zeke's grave, brushing snow from the headstone the way she had done 1,000 times before. I did it, Papa, she whispered. 20 years, and we are still here, still growing, still saving every child we can reach. She pressed her palm against the cold stone. I wish you could see Grace, your granddaughter, in every way that matters. She has your eyes, you know, that same look of determination, that same stubborn refusal to give up. She smiled through her tears. She is going to carry this forward when I am gone, her and all the others. The children we raised, the children they will raise, generation after generation. Your legacy will never die, Papa. I promise." The wind picked up swirling snow around her, and Emma could almost hear his voice in the howling. "That is my girl." She stood up, looked out at the valley one more time. 20 years ago, she had been a dying child with frozen feet and a broken heart. She had nothing, no family, no hope, no future. Now she had everything, not money or power or fame. Those things did not matter. What mattered was love. What mattered was family. What mattered was the knowledge that she had taken the pain of her past and transformed it into something beautiful. Every child she had saved was proof that suffering did not have to be the end of the story. Every life she had touched was evidence that love was stronger than hate, hope was stronger than despair, and light could survive even the darkest night. That was Zeke Morgan's true legacy. Not the ranch or the money or the buildings. Love. Love that healed wounds. Love that built families. Love that transformed throwaway children into people who knew their worth. And as long as Emma Rose Morgan drew breath, that love would continue to flow, would continue to grow, would continue to reach out into the darkness and pull in every lost soul who needed to know they mattered. She walked back down the hill, back toward the lights of home, back toward the family waiting for her. And in the stillness of the winter night, with snow falling softly all around, she heard her father's voice one final time. "You were never worthless, Emma Rose, not for one single moment of your life, and now the whole world knows it." Emma smiled. "Yes, Papa," she whispered. "Now they know." The story of Silver Creek Ranch did not end that night. It did not end 20 years later, when Emma Rose Morgan finally closed her eyes for the last time. It did not end when Grace Elizabeth Morgan took over and raised another generation of children. It did not end when those children grew up and started their own families, spreading the seeds of love across the country and beyond. Some stories never end. Some stories just keep growing, changing, evolving, touching lives that the original tellers could never have imagined. The girl who walked through a blizzard became the woman who built an empire of love. The children she saved became the parents and teachers and leaders who changed the world. The dream that Zeke Morgan planted in a single act of kindness became a forest that would shelter thousands. That was the miracle of Silver Creek. Not magic, not fortune, just love. Ordinary, stubborn, relentless love that refused to let go. And if you listen closely on cold winter nights when the snow falls soft and steady over the Bitterroot Valley, you can still hear echoes of that love. You can hear children laughing, families gathering, strangers becoming brothers and sisters. You can hear the words that changed everything spoken by a silver-haired man to a dying child in a blizzard so many years ago. You do now. Have somewhere to go. You do now. Because at Silver Creek Ranch, everyone had somewhere to go. Everyone had someone to love them. Everyone had a family. Forever. The end.